7 Elements. In the Surangama Sutra, Book 3, Ananda said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, the thus come one has often spoken of the mixture and union of causes and conditions, saying that the transformations of everything in the world are created from the mixing and uniting of the 4 elements. Why does the thus come one reject causes and conditions and spontaneity as well? I do not know how to understand your meaning now. Please be so compassionate as to instruct us, living beings, in the final meaning of the middle way, in the dharmas which are not idle theories." The Buddha then taught Ananda about the 7 great elements as follows. "Ananda, you have renounced the small vehicle, dharmas of the sound hearers, and those enlightened to conditions, and have resolved to diligently seek unsurpassed Bodhi. Because of that, I will now explain the foremost truth to you. Why do you still bind yourself up in the idle theories and false thoughts current among people of the world? Although you are very learned, you are like someone who can discuss medicines, but cannot distinguish a real medicine when it is placed before you. The thus come one says that you are truly pitiful. Listen attentively now as I explain this point in detail for you, and also for those of the future who cultivate the great vehicle, so that you all can penetrate to the real appearance. Ananda, according to what you said, the mixing and uniting of the 4 elements create the myriad transformations of everything in the world. Ananda, if the nature of those elements does not mix and unite in substance, then they cannot combine with other elements, just as empty space cannot combine with forms. Assuming that they do not mix and unite, they are then only in a process of transformation, in which they depend on one another for existence, from beginning to end. In the course of transformation they are produced and extinguished, being born and then dying, dying and then being born, in birth after birth, in death after death. The way a torch spun in a circle forms an unbroken wheel of flame. Ananda, the process is like water becoming ice, and ice becoming water again." The Buddha told Ananda, "Ananda, consider the nature of earth. Its coarse particles make up the great earth. Its fine particles make up motes of dust, down to and including motes of dust bordering upon emptiness. Ananda, if one divides those fine motes of dust, their appearance is at the boundaries of form. Then divide those into 7 parts. Ananda, if mote of dust bordering upon emptiness is divided and becomes emptiness, it should be that emptiness can give rise to form. Just now you asked if mixing and uniting doesn't bring about the transformations of everything in the world. You should carefully consider how much emptiness mixes and unites to make a single mote of dust bordering upon emptiness, since it makes no sense to say that dust bordering on emptiness is composed of dust bordering on emptiness. Moreover, since motes of dust bordering upon emptiness can be reduced to emptiness, of how many motes of such form as this must emptiness be composed? When these motes of form mass together, a mass of form does not make emptiness. When emptiness is massed together, a mass of emptiness does not make form. Besides, although form can be divided, how can emptiness be massed together? You simply do not know that in the treasury of the thus come one, the nature of form is true emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is true form. Pure at its origin, it pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds in response to their capacity to know. It is experienced to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. Ignorant of this fact, People in the world are so deluded as to assign its origin to causes and conditions, or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which have no real meaning. Ananda, fire, which has no nature of its own, depends upon various causes and conditions for its existence. Consider a family in the city that has not yet eaten. When they wish to prepare food, they hold up a speculum to the sun, seeking fire. Ananda, let us look into your suggestion that the fire comes forth from mixing and uniting. By way of example, you and I and the 1250 Bhikshus unite together to form a community. However, a careful analysis of the community reveals that every member composing it has his own body, birthplace, clan, and name. For instance, Sariputra is a Brahmin, Uravilva is of the Kasyapa clan, and Ananda come from the Gautama family. Ananda, suppose fire existed because of mixing and uniting. When the hand holds up the speculum to the sun to seek fire, does the fire come out of the speculum? Does it come out of the moksha tinder? Or does it come from the sun? Suppose, Ananda, that it came from the sun. Not only would it burn the moksha tinder in your hand, but as it came across the groves of trees, it should burn them up as well. Suppose that it came from the speculum, since it came out from within the speculum to ignite the moksha tinder. Why doesn't the speculum melt? Yet your hand that holds it feels no heat. How then could the speculum melt? Suppose that the fire came from the moksha tinder. Then why is fire generated only when the bright mirror comes into contact with the dazzling light? Furthermore, Ananda, on closer examination, you will find the speculum held in hands, the sun high up in the sky, and moksha tinder grown from the ground. Where does the fire come from? How can it travel some distance to reach here? The sun and the speculum cannot mix and unite, since they are far apart from each other. Nor can it be that the fire exists spontaneously, without an origin. You simply do not know that in the treasury of the thus come one, the nature of fire is true emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is true fire. Pure at its origin, it pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds, in response to their capacity to know. Ananda, you should know that fire is generated in the place where a speculum is held up to the sunlight, and fire will be generated everywhere if specula are held up to the sunlight throughout the Dharma realm. Since fire can come forth throughout the whole world, can there be any fixed place to which it is confined? It is experienced to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are so deluded as to assign its origin to causes and conditions or spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which have no real meaning. Ananda, water is by nature unstable. It may keep on flowing, or come to a stop. Kapila, Chakra, Padma, and Asta, and other great magicians of Sravasti, often hold up instruments to the light of the full moon at midnight to extract from the moon the essence of water, to mix with their drugs. Does the water come out of the crystal ball? Does it exist of itself in space? Or does it come from the moon? Ananda, suppose the water came from the distant moon. Water then should also flow from all the grass, and trees when the moonlight passes over them, on its way to the crystal ball. If it does flow from them, why wait for it to come out of the crystal ball? If it does not flow from the trees, then it is clear that the water does not descend from the moon. If it came from the crystal balls, then it should flow from the crystal all the time. Why would they have to wait for my night and the light of the full moon to receive it? If it came from space, which is by nature boundless, it would flow everywhere, until everything between earth and sky was submerged. How, then, could there still be travel by water, land, and space? Furthermore, upon closer examination, you will find that the moon moves through the sky. The crystal ball is held in by the hand, and the pan for receiving the water is put there by someone. But where does the water that flows into the pan come from? The moon and the crystal balls cannot mix or unite, since they are far apart. Nor can it be that the essence of water exists spontaneously without an origin. You still do not know that in the treasury of the thus come one the nature of water is true empty, and the nature of emptiness is true water, pure in its origin. It pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds, in response to their capacity to know. A crystal ball is held up at a certain place, and their water comes forth. If crystal balls were held up throughout the Dharma realm, then throughout the Dharma realm, water would come forth. Since water can come forth throughout the entire world, can there be any fixed place which it is confined? It is experienced to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are so deluded as to assign their origin to causes and conditions or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which have no real meaning. Ananda. By nature, the wind has no substance, and its movements and stillness are erratic. You always adjust your robe as you enter the great assembly. When the corner of your samgati brushes the person next to you, there is a slight breeze which stirs against that person's face. Does this wind come from the corner of the kashaya? Does it arise from emptiness? Or is it produced from the face of the person brushed by the wind? Ananda. If the wind comes from the corner of the kashaya, you are then clad in the wind, and your kashaya should fly about and leave your body. I am now speaking Dharma in the midst of the assembly, and my robe remains motionless and hangs straight down. You should look closely at my robe to see whether there is any wind in it. It cannot be that the wind is stored somewhere in the robe, either. If it arose from emptiness, why wouldn't the wind brush against the man even when your robe did not move? Emptiness is constant in nature, thus the wind should constantly arise. When there was no wind, the emptiness should disappear. You can perceive the disappearance of the wind. But what would the disappearance of emptiness look like? If it did arise and disappear, it could not be what is called emptiness. Since it is what is called emptiness, how can it generate wind? If the wind came from the face of the person by your side, it would blow upon you while you set your robe in order. Why would it blow backwards upon the person from whom it was generated? Upon closer examination, you will find that the robe is set in order by yourself. The face blown by the wind belongs to the person by your side, and the emptiness is tranquil and not involved in movement. Where, then, does the wind come from that blows in this place? The wind and emptiness cannot mix and unite, since they are different from each other. Nor should it be. that the wind spontaneously exists without an origin. You still do not know that in the treasury of the Thus Come One, the nature of wind is true emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is true wind. Pure at its origin, it pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds, in response to their capacity to know. Ananda, in the same way that you, as one person, move your robe slightly, and a small wind arises. So a wind arises in all countries if there is a similar movement throughout the Dharma realm. Since it can be produced throughout the world, how can there be any fixed place to which it is confined? It is experienced to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are so deluded as to assign their origin to causes and conditions or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which bear no real meaning. Ananda, the nature of emptiness has no shape. It is only apparent because of form. For instance, Sarvasti is far from the river. So when the Kshatriyas, Brahmins, Vaishyas, Sudras, Bharadvajas, Chandalas, and so forth, build their homes there, they dig wells seeking water. Where a foot of earth is removed, there is a foot of emptiness. Where as many as 10 feet of earth are removed, there are 10 feet of emptiness. The depth of the emptiness corresponds to the amount of earth removed. Does this emptiness come out of the dirt? Does it exist because of the digging? Or does it arise of itself without a cause? Moreover, Ananda, suppose this emptiness arose of itself without any cause. Why wasn't it unobstructed before the earth was dug? Quite the contrary. One saw only the great earth. There was no emptiness evident in it. If emptiness came about because of the removal of the earth, we should have seen it entering the well as the earth was removed. If emptiness was not seen entering the well when the earth was first removed, how can we say that emptiness came about cause of the removal of the earth? If there is no going in or coming out, then there is no difference between the earth and emptiness. Why, then, doesn't emptiness come out of the well, along with the earth in the process of digging? If emptiness appeared because of the digging, then the digging would bring out emptiness instead of the earth. If emptiness does not come out because of the digging, then the digging yields only earth. Why, then, do we see emptiness appear as the well is dug? You should consider this event more carefully. Look into it deeply, and you will find that the digging comes from the person's hand, as a means of conveyance, and the earth exists because of a change in the ground. But what caused the emptiness to appear? The digging and the emptiness, one being substantial and the other insubstantial, do not function on the same plane. They do not mix and unite. Nor can it be that emptiness exists spontaneously without an origin. The nature of emptiness is completely pervasive. It is basically unmoving. You should know that emptiness and earth, water, fire, and wind are together called the 5 elements. Their natures are true and perfectly fused, and all are the treasury of the Thus Come One, fundamentally devoid of production and extinction. Ananda, your mind is murky and confused, and you do not awaken to the fact that the source of the 4 elements is none other than the treasury of the Thus Come One. Why do you not take a look at emptiness to see whether it is subject to such relativities as coming and going? Do you know at all that in the treasury of the Thus Come One, the nature of enlightenment is true emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is true enlightenment, pure at its origin? It pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds, in response to their capacity to know. Ananda. If in one place there is a well empty of earth, there will be emptiness filling up that one place. If there are wells empty of earth in the 10 directions, there will be emptiness filling them up. In the 10 directions. Since it fills up the 10 directions, is there any fixed location in which emptiness is found? It is experienced to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are deluded as to assign their origin to causes and conditions or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which bear no real meaning. Ananda. Seeing awareness does not perceive by itself. It depends upon form and emptiness for its existence. You are now in the Jita Grove where you see brightness in the morning and darkness in the evening. Deep in the night you will see brightness when the moon arises, and darkness when no moon is visible. The brightness and darkness are discerned by the seeing. Is the seeing identical in substance with brightness, darkness, and emptiness? Or are they not the same substance? Are they the same and yet different? Or are they not the same and yet not different? Ananda. Suppose seeing were one with brightness, darkness, and emptiness. It so happens that where there is darkness, there is no brightness, and where there is brightness there is no darkness, because the two cancel each other out. If it were one with brightness, it would cease to exist in darkness. Such being the case, how could it perceive both brightness and darkness? If brightness and darkness differ from each other, how can they form a unity with seeing, which transcends production and destruction? Suppose that the essence of seeing were not of one substance with brightness and darkness, and that you were separate from light, darkness, and emptiness. Then what shape and appearance would the source of the seeing have? As you distinguish it, in the absence of darkness, brightness, and emptiness, the seeing would be the same as hair on a turtle, or horns on a hare. How could we establish the seeing perception without the presence of the three qualities of brightness, darkness, and emptiness? How could we say that the seeing was one with darkness and brightness, since brightness and darkness are opposite? Yet, how can we say that it was different from the three qualities mentioned, since in their absence the seeing perception can never be established? How could we say that the seeing was not one with emptiness, since no boundary is established between them when they are separated from each other? How could we say that they were not different, since the seeing always remains unchanged, regardless of whether it is perceiving brightness or perceiving darkness? You should examine this even greater detail. Investigate it minutely, consider it and contemplate it carefully. The light comes from the sun, and darkness from the absence of the moon. Penetration belongs to emptiness, and solidity returns to the earth. From what does the essence of seeing arise? Seeing has awareness, and emptiness is inanimate. They do not mix and unite. Nor can it be that the essence of seeing arise spontaneously without an origin. If the faculties of seeing, hearing, and knowing are by nature all-pervasive and unmoving, you should know that the stable, boundless emptiness, together with the unstable elements such as earth, water, fire, and wind, are together known as the 6 elements. They are, in nature, true and perfectly fused, and thus are the treasury of the thus come one, fundamentally devoid of production and destruction. Ananda, your nature is so submerged that you have not realized that your seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing are basically the treasury of the thus come one. You should contemplate seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing to see whether they are subject to production and extinction, whether they are identical or different, whether they are not subject to production and extinction, and whether they are not identical and not different. You still don't know that in the treasury of the thus come one, the nature of seeing is enlightened brightness. The essence of enlightenment is bright seeing. Pure at its origin, it pervades the Dharma realm. It accords with living beings' minds in response to their capacity to know. Consider, for example, the sense organ of seeing. Its seeing pervades the Dharma realm. The same is true of the luster of the wonderful virtue of hearing, smelling, tasting, contact, and knowing, since they fill emptiness in the 10 directions throughout the Dharma realm. How could there be any fixed location in which they are found? It is experience to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are so deluded as to assign its origin to causes and conditions or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which have no real meaning. Ananda, the nature of consciousness has no source, but is a false manifestation based on the 6 organs and objects. Now, take a look at the entire holy assembly gathered here. As you glance at each one in turn, everything you see is like what is seen in a mirror, where nothing has any special distinction. However, your consciousness will identify them one by one. For example, Manjusri Purna, Maudgalyana, Subhuti, and Sariputra. Does the discerning faculty of the conscious mind come from seeing, from forms, or from emptiness? Or does it arise suddenly without a cause? Ananda, suppose your consciousness came from seeing. If there were no brightness, darkness, form, and emptiness, if these 4 did not exist, you could not see. With seeing non-existent, what would be the origin of your consciousness? If your consciousness arose from form rather than from seeing, it would not see either in brightness or in darkness. In the absence of brightness and darkness, it would not see form or emptiness either. In the absence of form, where would your consciousness come from? If it came from emptiness, it is neither an appearance nor the seeing. Since it does not see, it is unable by itself to discern brightness, darkness, form, or emptiness. Since it is not an appearance, it is in itself devoid of external conditions. Therefore, there is no place for seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing to be established. Since its location is devoid of these 2, the consciousness that arises from emptiness would be the same as non-existent. Even if it did exist, it would not be the same as a thing. Even if your consciousness came forth from it, how would it discern anything? If it suddenly comes forth without a cause, why can't you discern the moonlight within the sunlight? You should investigate this even more carefully, discriminate it in detail, and look into it. The seeing belongs to your eyes. The appearances are considered to be the environment. What has an appearance is existent. What is without any appearance is non-existent. What, then, are the conditions that cause the consciousness to come into being? The consciousness moves, and the seeing is quiet. They do not mix and unite. Smelling, hearing, awareness, and knowing are the same way. Nor should it be that the condition of consciousness exists spontaneously without an origin. If this conscious mind does not come from anywhere, you should know that the same is true of the mind, which makes distinctions, and the seeing, hearing, awareness, and knowing, which are all complete and tranquil. Their nature is without an origin. They and emptiness, earth, water, fire, wind are together called the seven elements. Their true natures are perfectly fused, and all are the treasury of the thus come one, fundamentally devoid of production and extinction. Ananda, your mind is coarse and shallow, and so you do not realize that the seeing and hearing are the treasury of the thus come one, and you do not discover that knowing is the same way. You should contemplate these 6 locations of consciousness. Are they the same or different? Are they empty or existent? Are they neither the same nor different? Are they neither empty nor existent? You basically do not know that in the treasury of the thus come one, the nature of consciousness is bright and knowing. Enlightened brightness is the true consciousness. The wonderful enlightenment is tranquil and pervades the Dharma realm. It encompasses the emptiness of the 10 directions and issues forth in it. How can it have a location? It is experience to whatever extent is dictated by the law of karma. People in the world, ignorant of this fact, are so deluded as to assign its origin to causes and conditions or to spontaneity. These mistakes, which arise from the discriminations and reasoning processes of the conscious mind, are nothing but the play of empty words, which have no real meaning.